Thank you very much. One of the most heated debates in AI, especially over the last year, has been whether or not powerful foundation models should be open sourced. It was a key topic at the Bletchley AI Safety Summit last month. It's a topic we've already heard about today. It's a topic that's even divided the Turing Award winners. Yoshua Bengio earlier on raised his concerns. Jeffrey Hinton has likened open sourcing powerful foundation models to making powerful weapons freely available, whereas others have been powerful advocates of open sourcing, such as Yann LeCun, who's highlighted the beneficial role that open sourcing AI plays in promoting innovation, and has argued that this might actually provide a competitive advantage in commercial processes as well. Earlier this year, we also saw the release of several open letters calling for open sourcing frontier models to be protected, including an open letter from the Lion Collective, which argued that open source promotes safety through transparency, as well as promoting competition, especially for small to medium enterprises. Because we can't stay out of an argument, I was part of a team of researchers from across several universities and think tanks who dove deeper into the question earlier this year, led by Dr. Elizabeth Seeger, who can't be here today, of the Center for the Governance of AI. The report aimed to clarify the risks, benefits, and possible alternative ways of achieving those benefits associated with open sourcing foundation models. I'll mostly draw on that report, but with some of my own positions and perspectives as well. Open sourcing in AI typically involves making model architectures and weights freely accessible to anyone to modify, study, build on, and use. However, there are different degrees of open sourcing, as illustrated by this graphic by Irene Solomon in a paper earlier this year. And that can range from fully closed for internal use only, to staged release, to access through API, right through to full release of all model components. And there are different benefits and risks associated with each of these different stages. Perhaps the leading open source model currently available is Meta's Llama 2, released in July of this year. The biggest version of that is a 70 billion parameter model, and it's already been used to develop LLMs like Metatron, which achieves state-of-the-art open source performance on common medical benchmarks, and will no doubt be a very useful tool for medical AI research. Benefits of open sourcing frontier AI. For me, the key benefit is that it promises to be a massive facilitator of innovation and exploration, allowing people worldwide to explore the possibilities of foundation models, to tweak them, to apply them to a wide range of scientific and social purposes. This really is a huge benefit, and any argument to limit open source AI must take this into account. Open sourcing frontier models also represents a powerful opportunity to democratize AI access. With development of frontier AI being very expensive and increasingly concentrated in a small number of for-profit companies, open sourcing is seen as a way of distributing access and control over AI and the power that it represents. AI is, of course, going to be one of the major economic and scientific sources of power over the coming decades. Risks of open sourcing frontier AI. I won't spend too long on this because I feel like they've come up several times already today. The broad capabilities of foundation models, especially those on the frontier, mean that it's increasingly possible to adapt them to all sorts of different purposes, including ones that people originally developing them might not have anticipated, and that includes malicious purposes. For present-day systems, that might include targeted propaganda and misinformation, production of harmful materials such as non-consensual pornography or hate content, providing dangerous information. Without guardrails, a frontier model might tell you how to create a bomb from household resources. Typically, frontier models have safeguards built in to prevent misuse, but when you open source these models, it becomes increasingly possible to disable the safeguards, as opposed to models only available through API. Innovation can also lead bad actors to identify dangerous new capabilities or dangerous new misuses through fine-tuning, such as, for example, for fraud. If such potential for misuse is identified, it's going to be very difficult to withdraw the open source model post-release because it's just going to be out there. And it's also going to be easier for attackers to identify vulnerabilities in foundation models if they're open sourced. Looking forwards, we can expect these models to become increasingly more powerful. And it might be that having them widely available without the controls offered by API or by stage release could have some catastrophic misuse consequences. These might include use for large-scale cyber attacks, as has been mentioned, large-scale fraud, enabled by broad abilities to impersonate, manipulate, extract information from people, providing dangerous information that could be used for even more significant harms such as chemical or biological attacks, although this concern in terms of threat models is a point of fierce debate at the moment. These open source models could also be used in more sophisticated scaffolds that introduce other elements such as autonomy or long-range planning. An early example of such a scaffold is AutoGPT, which is built on top of GPT-4. Such scaffolds could result in highly unpredictable consequences. Conclusions. My broad conclusion is that for many, if not most foundation models presently available, the benefits probably outweigh the risks with due care, but that for a small number that are really on the cutting edge, API access or stage release might be more appropriate. So I wouldn't endorse open sourcing GPT-4 or Gemini at this point. It likely will become safer over time to release these models as we have time to better understand their capabilities, better limit their risks, and as society's understanding and resilience to these new technologies becomes more advanced. However, if we're looking at the expected rate of progress that some of our speakers today have highlighted, 10 years to developing something akin to AGI, we might start to see more and more powerful models, even not right on the cutting edge. And at that point, I think we do need to start thinking very carefully about whether or not it's appropriate to open source models of that capability and whether it is indeed possible to put in place enough safeguards and whether it's possible to have the kind of robust oversight, testing, and liability that you might want in such circumstances. The report also made a number of other recommendations. It recommends rigorous risk assessments around decisions to open source cutting-edge foundation models, exploration of alternatives that provide benefits of open sourcing for cases in which open sourcing is deemed risky, and this includes both structured access for researchers and for auditors, and governance structures to ensure democratic oversight and input into AI development and governance. The concerns about AI being ever more controlled by powerful corporations who must be driven by profit motivations more so than scientific progress and societal innovations, these are real concerns that should be taken seriously. And so we do need to look at finding alternatives if we are limiting open source AI. And various ideas to this end are explored in the report. One thing that's going to be necessary is multi-stakeholder efforts to define fine-grained standards for when model components should be released. Open source is not just a binary of closed or open. Rather, there's a spectrum in terms of the extent of model components that might be released, and these will have different risks and benefits associated with them. So we need to come up with a more fine-grained set of standards and governance around this. Lastly, there's going to need to be oversight, in our view, of open source AI by governments in cases where the stakes are sufficiently high. And this will include model sharing standards and safety measures. I'm coming close to my time, so the last point I want to make is that we can talk about the risks of open sourcing AI, but we should also acknowledge that closed source AI is also, of course, not without risk. There's a serious issue, in my view, if concerns around AI misuse lead to commercial companies withholding information around training data, techniques used, and other key processes. Already this makes evaluating the true capabilities and risks of frontier AI systems much harder to do in a rigorous way. if the most powerful AI systems are to be kept behind closed doors without all that information made available, and there are good reasons not to make all the information available to everyone, it is essential that they be subject to robust external auditing, evaluation, and red teaming, and that the necessary information to do that be made available to the right parties. It's my belief that practices of the sort that are being proposed in the UK safety guidelines and the US Biden voluntary commitments, and that have been discussed at the UK summit last month, it's my view that we need to start moving from these voluntary commitments to binding regulation as a matter of fair urgency, given the rate of progress. And that's my time up, so thank you very much.